want you to know that you're welcome to join us at 10 a.m. on Sundays. Please be sure to hit subscribe to receive our sermons. We can't wait to meet you.
I haven't done this preaching thing for a while. I was getting kind of used to it. Getting kind of spoiled. So, happy Epiphany. Epiphany is the day that the wise men actually show up. So, Christmas is now actually over. So this is the day when you're actually supposed to be getting your presents, which my children reminded me today. But I forgot. So, Mom of the Year, right here. Waiting for that. And there is a lot of tradition around the three wise men, the three kings, lots and lots of really good Renaissance artwork, actually. Lots and lots. And lots of beautiful reflections on the gifts that the Magi bring, the gold, the frankincense, the myrrh. What do they represent? What does that mean? If you need to know, they represent royalty, divinity, and eventually his death or sacrifice. So there's a lot of stuff in it, right? I mean, everybody knows about the three kings. Everybody knows. Were they kings? Were they wise? I mean, they're wise. They might have brought something else that was a little bit more useful. But three guys show up. And, I mean, who, when they've just had a baby, doesn't want three random dudes showing up? Hello. Hey-o. Okay, but here's what I really, really think is important. John Wesley, who you happen to know is one of my favorites, second only to Richard Hooker, which is why I named my daughter after my second favorite theologian. He points out that this is the first entrance of the Gentiles. This is the first moment that we see that the Gentiles are also a part of this gift. And that's really, really important because I know we Christians have been doing this thing for a while now, and we like to think that Jesus was one of us. Jesus was not one of us. Jesus didn't look like us. Jesus didn't pray like us. Jesus was Jewish, dark-skinned. He was from the Middle East. So when you see Lutheran Jesus who has blue eyes and brown hair, he's like, that was not Jesus. But we thank you again to Renaissance art and medieval art, where it was the norm to put divine things into our time and place, which is awesome because that's really, really important to realize that God and Christ are in our time and place. The problem arises when you think that God and Jesus look like our time and place. They don't. Jesus don't wear no Levi's. But Wesley points out that this is the first time that the Gentiles really show up. We're Gentiles, by the way. Heads up. We're Gentiles. That's us. Those are our people. But I think what's really powerful here is they're not us. Because, right, we've written ourselves into the story. We're right there with the shepherds. And we're right there with the donkeys. And I probably think that's probably a better place for us to be. Right next to that. We're with the camels. And we're right there. We're right there in the center of it. But the message is for everybody. And that is the power of this story. The power of this story is that people who aren't us, who don't look like us, who don't pray like us, who don't live like us, Christ comes for them too. Christ is universal. God is for everybody, not just people who pray like us, not just people who look like us, just not people who live like us, but literally everyone, which means God looks different to everyone. Christ's experience is different for everyone because Christ is as unique. God is as unique as we are, and God's message is as unique as we are because that's how God communicates. And I think what's awesome to think about in this story is How did they know? How did they know? Because if you're Jewish, you have the Old Testament, you have the prophets, you have all these things saying that this person is coming, the Messiah is coming, and it's going to look like this. And so they're like, oh yeah, we've heard all this. We know the prophecies. But if you're not Jewish, if you're not an Israelite, you don't know the Old Testament. I mean, because I hate to break it to you, but like, they're a very small segment. We think that everybody knows all this, but no. It's a very, very small group. Who knows about the prophets? Who knows about the scriptures and all these things that are supposed to be coming? So, how did they know? How did these 3 dudes know what was coming? How did they know to go look for it? Well, isn't that interesting? Because they don't have the prophets, but they knew. So one of the stories is the stars, that they use science and the stars to see it. So God is speaking to them even in other ways than the prophets, in other ways than the scriptures. That's important. Listen to that. That's really important. Hang on to that. Because God speaks beyond what we think God speaks through. We think Bible. That's it. That's all you got. You ain't got the Bible, you ain't got nothing. But wait, that's not true. That's not true, because God speaks to people who do not have those things. And they show up. They find Christ. And what does that mean? Does that mean that God can use lots and lots of different ways? Yes, that's what it means. It means I might have my floppy Bible, but I also might have a science textbook that shows me a map of the stars. It also means I might be digging in the dirt in the garden and see seeds that grow that shouldn't. And isn't that interesting? It means that there are all sorts of different ways that God communicates with us. And there are all sorts of different ways that God communicates with you and that God can communicate with me. And guess what? Oh, heavens above. God communicates with them. What? No. They were not invited. They are not one of the shepherds. They are not Jesus. They are not one of the camels. They are one of us. What are they doing here? Who let them in? God. God let them in. But here's the beauty. God lets us in too. Man, I never get amens from Episcopalians, so woo! That's a big day. Can I get an hallelujah? All right, let's stand together and say the words of the Nicene Creed.